Hello, I'm Dr. John White. I'm the Chief Medical Officer for WebMD, and you're listening to WebMD's Health Discovered podcast. Our goal is to bring you fascinating stories and unique perspectives while looking for those unexpected discoveries along the way. Today, we'll discuss mental fitness, including ways to improve our quality of life, develop emotional muscles, and discuss the lasting impact of creating a mental health toolkit. We'll also explore how working on our emotional health can be a transformational experience that aligns with working on our physical health to improve our overall self-esteem, our relationships, and professional lives. And I have to tell you, I am so excited about our guest today, Nate Checketts. He's the co-founder and CEO of Rhone, a premium men's and women's performance lifestyle company, who has challenged the idea of staying in your lane by developing a program called the 12 Pursuits that's rolling out this year. And I think you'll want to hear about it. Welcome to the WebMD Health Discovered podcast, Nate.
Thank you, John. It's such a privilege to be on with you. I'm really excited to talk about this with you.
Now, I found you through Instagram, and what I was struck by, here you run this terrific clothing line, but here you are talking about a performance line, which is primarily about physical wellness and physical fitness. But as I scroll through your feed, I was struck by how you primarily talk about mental health and mental wellness. So there almost seems like a disconnect.
Yeah, well, I think in order to understand why anyone should spend any time listening to us about mental health, mental fitness, you have to understand our story and the way that we grew up. My brother and I, we are the products of two amazing parents. My father worked in professional sports and was our coach. He coached us in soccer and football and basketball and was on the sidelines and helped train us. And just an amazing father who loved and believed in the importance of movement. But my mother went back to college after having 6 kids and became a family therapist. And so she was always much more in touch with how did that make you feel? How are you processing those emotions? And so growing up in a home where you had movement, physical fitness, and then around the dinner table, mental fitness conversations was really important to us. And we didn't think it was abnormal. We just thought this is a typical American household. And I think as we started to get a bit older, start to have children of ourselves, watch friends, family members, and even ourselves go through challenges, we started to realize that there was a bit of a lost art and so much emphasis placed on physical performance that there wasn't enough being discussed and talked about our mental health, our mental performance. And personally, I lost 2 close friends to suicide. And as you can imagine, I think for anyone who goes through something like that, there's a level of survivor's guilt that you experience. And you start to understand, why didn't I do more? And understanding that, mental health isn't just about disease states, but it is very similar to the way that we think about physical health. And so it started us on this journey. And so when we decided to start a brand, that was at the foundation is, how do we make clothes that are comfortable and best in class? And we think they are, but it's a delivery vehicle. It is a platform for us to tell a broader message of how to help people take care of themselves.
Wow. So you're really getting people at a time and they might not be thinking about it, but then unexpectedly, they get this content and information. I was struck by recently on your page, you talk about a lot of companies have like a mental health day, right? So it's one point in time, and you talk about how you got to walk the walk. And you and I chatted earlier about this toolkit that you want to develop and have developed, and how people need a mental health toolkit. So I have to ask you, Nate, what does a mental health toolkit look like?
I think the easiest parallel is physical health. When we talk about physical health, most people think about exercise or movement. But when we talk about mental health, most people think disease state. They think depression, anxiety, suicide. And physical health tends to not be cardiovascular
Sure.
disease, diabetes, et cetera. So the physical health toolkit that most people have is a certain level of movement, a certain level of water intake or caloric restriction. It could be Pilates, it could be stretching, it could be zone 2 cardio, it could be yoga, it could be CrossFit. There's so many different modalities there. And mental health is not that dissimilar. Meditation as a tool is not right for everyone. Some people really benefit from that. For others, it might be breath work. For others, it might be conversations with a therapist. And yet for others, it might be doing really difficult things like going and climbing a mountain or going rucking. And the importance isn't that you get overly prescriptive about what is in the toolkit, but that there should be a level of self-discovery to understand what helps you perform at your best, not just physically, but mentally, and to understand that there's a big overlap of those two, that our mind and our body are inherently connected, and that as we spend time discovering our own mental health toolkit, that we are preparing ourselves, we are effectively loading our storage for when difficult times will come. Most of the time, we can't often predict that, when a loved one will get sick, or when we might sustain an injury, or when something bad might happen at work or to someone that we care about. Something happens. And when you have developed this mental health toolkit, you know what to rely on, what to fall back on, and you will have this storage that you can look to. And so that's part of what we talk a lot about.
And I want to ask you though, because we kind of spend a certain amount of time on our physical health, where, there's a certain number of days you want to go to the gym, or a certain number of days to go running. Do you need to spend that same amount of time on mental health? Do you think about it like that?
Yeah, I do. I think that the mistake that we make is that we don't consider mental health as a muscle, which
Hmm.
it is. For example, gratitude is one of these important attributes that is tied to the way people feel. But gratitude is a muscle. It needs to be exercised. And so if you kind of say, well, yeah, I'm grateful for
Hmm.
my job, and I'm grateful for my family, I'm grateful for my parents. But there's a difference between kind of just flippantly saying it and taking a step to really feel the emotion of gratitude. And what happens when you feel the emotion of gratitude is it actually has all these physiological benefits associated with that moment of reflection. And the other thing that starts to happen is you start to notice other things in your life that will make you more grateful.
There's a practice to that, meaning, do you use a gratitude journal? There's lots of data that has shown people that write down, have to write it down every day, something that they're grateful for. When they've looked at MRI, functional MRI, what they've often seen is that those areas of the brain that are associated with depression or anger are actually dampened. And that areas of pleasure, dopamine, and others in terms of transmitters are highlighted. So we have a science to it, but people just can't be like, well, I'm going to be grateful and say it, right? So how do you practice gratitude, Nate? What do you do?
I do two things. The first is that I'm a man of faith and I express gratitude to a higher power. And for me, that's been an important practice that I've had in my life. And I love that word practice because it's not a performance, but they use that word in yoga. It is something that is to be repeated consistently. So that's one thing that I do. And then I also use a tool called the 5 Minute Journal, which was developed by a really good friend of mine, Alex Icon. And you start and end the day with gratitude. And I love the practice of writing it down because you've got one slot and you kind of think about, all right, what am I going to put in there today? And then you start to look for those moments and it almost becomes this self-fulfilling practice. I really, really believe in the power of writing down what you're grateful for.
When we chatted a few weeks ago, you said, John, I'm really excited about this 12 Pursuits initiative. Tell us about that.
Well, when I was 19, I was handed a paper on Benjamin
Hmm.
Franklin. When I think he was about 35 years old, he had decided he wanted to engage in the pursuit of what he called becoming the perfect man. So he wrote down 13 virtues that he believed were necessary for reaching this ideal state of perfection. And some people theorized, well, he came up with 13 because there were 13 colonies. It was an important number. But the reason Benjamin Franklin at his root was a mathematician, the reason why he picked 13 is because it went into 52 weeks in a year evenly, 4 weeks at a time. And so his thought process was, I can't be all of these things at once. And so if I could focus my time, energy, and effort and make a study of these virtues for 4 weeks, then they will build on each other. In there were things like honesty and integrity and prudence. And so I was so struck by that because when it comes to health and wellness, it is an overwhelming list of things to
Sure.
do. That's how somebody might perceive it is, oh, now I've got to cold plunge and I've got to take my supplements and I've got to make sure I'm getting enough sunlight and I've got to do, and not to mention all the kind of quote unquote secret magic pills that start to
Well,
exist and
there
pop
aren't
up
any,
on
but
social
yeah.
media. Exactly. And the point is that there is no
Mhm.
magic pill, but the best thing that we have is developing consistency and practice. And so what my brother and I were talking about is if we were to create our own list of 13 virtues, what would be on that list? And what we came back to is this idea of 13 is kind of confusing because when you lay it out in a calendar, it doesn't match up with anything. We already have 12 months. Why wouldn't we just use 12 that align directly to the calendar months? And we identified 6 principles of physical health and 6 principles of mental health, but they kind of
Mhm.
overlap with each other. And the idea was to teach people how to develop sustainable habits that you can practice on a daily, consistent basis that will help them lead more healthy and happy lives. I started this with my own family. I've got 3 boys. What we did is we took these topics, and this, it starts with creating a vision
Mhm.
for the future. That's January. February is all about sleep. March is hydration. April is breath work.
Mm.
And so they start to build on each other. May is nutrition. So when I did it with my family, each one of us, my wife or myself or one of my 3 boys, my youngest was 6 at the time, they got assigned a topic. And so the 6-year-old might have sleep. And so he had to create a presentation. He could use the computer or he could do it just with poster board and talk about why sleep mattered. And then we would set a sleep goal for the month.
You're
So for
tough.
example,
You're making your kids
yeah.
presentations.
Oh yeah. But they were so creative. And so we would,
Mhm.
at the beginning of the month, they would do a little presentation and they would say, all right, the challenge for this month is to reduce your wake time
Mhm.
variability to be within 30 minutes. Which was hard. And then we had sticker charts and we would track it. And we did that for every single month. And it had such an impact on our family that we realized that by teaching ourselves and the kids to take better care of themselves, they don't listen to what we say. You can preach to them, you can talk to them, but they really only follow what you do. And so by doing it together, it was this really cool moment as a family. So this year, as a company, I decided to bring it to our
Yeah.
team. And we've been doing it as a team. And we've brought in world class speakers and experts once a month to speak about the topic. We put out the goals and the challenges for the month. And then we create accountability partnership. This month, for example, is all about movement. So at the beginning of the month, we asked everyone to state their movement goals that they felt comfortable sharing. Not everyone felt comfortable sharing everything. And then you check in. So I know that one of the people on my team, she has set a goal to go on a walk, a 1.5 mile walk with her 2 daughters every day at the end of the day. So I can check in on her and say, hey, how's that going?
Yeah.
How's your walk going? And then she knows to check in with me on my goals, on what I'm doing. And then you feel this level of healthy
Mhm.
motivation to do it together. And the point is as we discussed before, there is no magic pill. But what we do know is consistency of good
Yeah.
habit building is the best thing we can do to build a resilience and a defense mechanism about the
Right.
challenges that come our
And
way.
using science, and as you point out, that word practice. So there's a lot of science behind the importance of sleep, but it's also, the issue of mindfulness. It's the same as yoga. What I always tell patients, you have to learn about mindfulness and you have to practice it. You just can't go in a room and be quiet and think that's mindfulness and then be wondering
Yeah.
why that doesn't work. There's a skill set, just as if it's a sport that you're trying to learn, and it takes practice. Now, if people want to learn more about these 12 initiatives, where would they find more information?
Well, if they come and follow us on our
Hmm.
social media pages, which is just at Rhone, we are starting to create a lot more content
Great.
for this. And starting in 2025, we will be launching the program more formally to our
Hmm.
customers and within our store teams and creating events around it. And so there's a lot more coming here, but the reception has been just enormously positive. And again, it's one thing to have a goal, but it's another
Hmm.
thing to have a shared community goal. And the nice thing too is somebody might say, "Hey, I'm not really interested in learning more about nutrition or breath work or gratitude or service." These are all different pursuits that we have. So they can skip a month and they can come back when they say, "You know what? I really need to focus on my sleep." And then you get a chance to
Hmm.
learn from a world-class sleep expert who's going to talk about some of the ways to improve your sleep that you might not have thought about before. And just doing this within our own team this year, we've had, we're in June, so we've had 6 speakers, world-class speakers that I'm so honored that they would take the time to come and speak to our team. It has been incredibly impactful, and I find myself every month, even though I've now been doing this for 3 years, I started myself, then with my family,
Yeah.
then with the team. I learn something new every single
Mhm.
year because these are timeless principles, and you don't reach a state of perfection. There's no place where
Yeah.
you, like, hit a buzzer and the confetti drops. There's
Hmm.
just more progress and pursuit. And so that's all
Right.
that all ties back to our brand mission, which is inspiring each other in the pursuit of progress and moving forever forward.
I want to go back to this concept that we started off with, the stay in your lane phrase, which a lot of people, you included, really don't like. But, just to play devil's advocate, Nate, I came to buy a shirt. I'm just looking for some,
Yeah.
performance pants. Why are you talking about all this? And you are a company, right? So you have investors. You
Yeah.
have to be as successful. You're not a nonprofit. What do you say when I'm sure there are some people saying to you, Nate, this is all important, being somewhat sarcastic, but you need to focus on your day to day of building a business, of a clothing line. What's your response?
Well, I think life is meant to have meaning. And so my first response would say, well, go try our product and try any of our competitors' product. And if you think they make better clothes than us, then we can start to have a conversation. But I don't think they do. I think we make the
Mhm.
best product on the planet in our category. And I agree with you. That is the foundation that gives us the ability to have these conversations. But I also believe that building a brand that matters is good business, that doing good is good business. And for us, this is what we truly believe in. This is what gets me excited. The team knows that I get far more energized about going and speaking to a group of high school students or a university or a local town about what we're trying to build and trying to create better communities and habits and homes than I do about what's the drawstring in our new active short. I hire the absolute best people I can find to make those decisions. And then I try and stay out of their way so that they can make great product. But I want to build a brand that matters. And I believe in order to do that, it has to be authentic to what we think and care about. And this is what Ben and I really get most excited and passionate about.
But Nate, I also want to follow up. There's often a lot of internal resistance, right? People aren't ready to make these steps, or it seems too overwhelming to do it, or I'm just not ready. What's your response to that? How do you help people when they're in that state of internal resistance?
Yeah, well, certainly. And look, change is hard. It's hard for all of us. And I think while these principles are simple and timeless, they're not
Yeah.
easy. It's not easy to get
Mhm.
consistent sleep. We live in a chaotic world. It's not easy to find time to express
Mhm.
gratitude or to take time to serve others. But what happens, just like any level of molding, is that as you put time into consistency and effort, most people overestimate what they can accomplish in a day, but underestimate what they can accomplish in a year. You are what you do repeatedly. And that's why I believe in these habits that are so important. There's always going to be roadblocks. And I think it's just about creating a level of consistent pattern.
And I love this metaphor of building storage, developing those skills, particularly when you need it, when something unexpected happens. And that's when that storage is really going to come in handy.
Can I give you one
Yeah,
little hack, if you will,
sure.
that that really stood out to me. And I don't remember where I learned this, but it may have been from my mom. Somebody challenged me to make a list of the 50 greatest moments of my life. And I was like, that's a lot.
Hmm.
But the point is that when difficult moments come, or let's say that you're not even having a difficult moment, you're just having a tired moment. You're in the middle of a day and you're not feeling motivation. You can pull up this list, and I made mine digitally, and then you step into that memory. So it could be as simple as a great moment in high school sports or birth of a child. And then you close your eyes, you envision that moment, you smell the smells, you feel the feels, you wake up, and it can have a physiological effect on you. And I think by being intentional when you have moments of safety and creating that level of storage, to your point, it's like a computer, you get to pull up the file. And so that can help you in the moments when life feels chaotic, when life feels uncontrollable.
Well, Nate, it has been such a pleasure talking to you. I've been looking forward to our discussion today, and it has not disappointed because this combination of physical health and mental health is so important, especially nowadays when people are really being challenged. And this holistic approach, even to business, is not something that we hear a lot about. So you are truly a trailblazer. And, I look forward to hearing more about what you're doing.
I love your functional approach to health and wellness because really at the end, we can only lift each other to the point that we're at. And so it takes a real curiosity mindset. And for someone as well educated and as accomplished as you to have that, I think speaks volumes to your
Well,
character.
thank you very much for that. And for our listeners, they can find out more about you by following you on Instagram, as I do at Nate Checketts. And I want to thank everyone for listening. Please take a moment to follow, rate, and review this podcast on your favorite listening platforms. And if you'd like to send me an email about the topics you're interested in or questions for future guests, drop me a note at webmdpodcast@webmd.net. This is Dr. John White for the WebMD Health Discovered podcast.